The test drive. I was looking for a used car in a South American country. After traveling for months, I wanted the freedom to move around at my own pace. I visited several used car dealerships before finding a black sedan that caught my eye. For its age, it was in surprisingly good condition. "Can I take it for a test drive?" The salesman hesitated for a moment. "Sure, go ahead," he said, handing me the keys. I got in and started the engine. For an old car, it ran smoothly. I adjusted the rear-view mirror, checking my surroundings, and then I saw something in the back seat. A dark shape, a figure, just for a split second. I spun around. Nothing. Just my imagination? I checked the mirror again. This time there was nothing. Still, a strange unease settled in my chest. Shaking it off, I pulled out of the lot and started driving. After a few minutes, I noticed something odd. A faint smell. Like burnt metal. Like blood. What the hell is that smell? I pressed the button to roll down the window. But the windows wouldn't move. Faulty wiring? I switched on the air conditioning instead. And then I heard breathing. A slow, deliberate inhale coming from the back seat. I stiffened. The car was empty. It was supposed to be empty, but I could feel it. Something was behind me. Slowly, I glanced at the rear-view mirror, and there, a shadow peeked out from behind the passenger seat's headrest. My stomach dropped. I slammed my foot on the brake, but the brake didn't work. No. I pressed down harder. Nothing. The car kept moving. Then, in the mirror, the shadow moved. The back door unlocked and opened. Cold air rushed in. The burnt metal smell grew stronger. And then, something climbed inside. A weight settled on my shoulder. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Every instinct screamed, "Don't look." But my neck started turning on its own. From the corner of my eye, I saw something black, shifting, and then a low, guttural sound rasped near my ear. I clenched my teeth and yanked the steering wheel, and in that instant, the brakes suddenly worked. The car came to a screeching stop. I threw open the door and stumbled out, gasping for air. When I turned back, the car was empty. Shaken, I ran back to the dealership. I found the salesman and forced myself to speak. "Something's wrong with that car." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "You were already driving something wrong." "What do you mean?" The salesman hesitated, then met my eyes, and said, "That car was totaled in an accident a week ago." I felt the blood drain from my face. Then, what the hell was I driving? Title transfer. I was traveling through Eastern Europe. My stay had extended longer than expected, so instead of renting a car, I decided to buy a used one. At a local dealership, I found a reasonably priced SUV, old, but in decent condition. "I can transfer the title, right?" The salesman gave me a strange look, but nodded. "No problem," he said, preparing the paperwork. The purchase went smoothly. I received the registration, the keys, and drove off. A small pendant hung from the dashboard, left behind by the previous owner. "I'll toss it later," I thought. I started the engine. It ran smoothly. Everything seemed fine. But after a few days, I noticed something strange. The odometer was going backward. When I first checked, it read 142,500 kilometers. Yesterday it was 142,470 kilometers. And this morning, 142,430 kilometers. This isn't possible. Maybe I misremembered. I checked photos I had taken on the first day. The numbers had definitely changed. Then, something else. The fuel gauge wasn't going down. In fact, it was slightly higher than before. Something was wrong. Maybe the odometer was tampered with. Even so, mileage doesn't decrease. A knot tightened in my stomach. I pulled over and got out. That's when I saw it, and my blood ran cold. The previous owner's name was still on the back window. I had completed the paperwork. The registration should be in my name, but when I checked the documents again, the name hadn't changed. Did the dealership screw up? Trying to shake the unease, I got back in the car. I started the engine, and then I saw something in the rearview mirror. Fingers. Thin, pale fingers curling around the headrest. Someone was behind me. My breath hitched. I couldn't turn around. Then, a sound. A faint, distorted whisper. A garbled noise, like static mixed with breathing. The car suddenly started moving on its own. What the hell? I slammed the brake. Nothing. The car kept accelerating. I yanked the wheel. It wouldn't turn. Then, the radio crackled. A broken voice came through. Return? My chest tightened. A voice. No, a sound was echoing through the cabin. Return it. Return it. In the mirror. The fingers twitched. I screamed, yanked the door open, and threw myself onto the pavement. Gasping for air, I scrambled to my feet. I turned, and the car was just sitting there, silent, motionless, like nothing had happened. The next day I returned to the dealership. I placed the keys on the counter. The salesman frowned. This car, what's wrong with it? He hesitated. Then, checking the paperwork, his expression darkened. He looked up and said, "There's no record of a title transfer." A shiver ran down my spine. I turned toward the SUV. On the back window, the previous owner's name was slowly fading, and in that moment, I understood. This car had never belonged to me. The scrapyard. I was traveling through an African country. The roads were rough, and renting a car was becoming too expensive. A local acquaintance suggested I check out a scrapyard on the outskirts of town. A scrapyard? Some of the cars are still usable. If you get one repaired, it's way cheaper. That afternoon, I was taken to the scrapyard. It was massive, filled with rusting vehicles stacked on top of one another. Among them, I spotted a relatively intact Land Cruiser. What about this one? The engine still runs, but the last owner, the man hesitated, died in an accident. That made me pause, but the price was unbeatable. After a quick repair, I bought it and started driving. For the first few days, it worked perfectly. Smooth ride, no mechanical issues. Then, on the fourth night, I started hearing noises. While driving, I heard a faint creaking sound from the back seat, like something shifting its weight. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The dim light inside the car showed nothing unusual, but the seat cushion had sunk slightly. My throat tightened. Just the road bumps, I told myself. I rolled down the window for fresh air, but the seat was still shifting, as if someone was slowly leaning forward. A chill ran through me. I drove straight back to town and avoided looking at the mirror. That night I made sure not to go near the car. The next morning, as I reached for the keys, knock, knock. A faint tapping sound came from the passenger side window. I froze. Outside there was no one, nothing around, no movement. Telling myself it was nothing, I started the engine. Then, in the mirror, the back seat slowly sank again. Something was sitting there. Panic surged through me. I reached for the door, but it wouldn't open. I fumbled with the lock, sweat dripping down my forehead. Then, a breath. A slow, raspy exhale right behind me. It wasn't human. It wasn't even a whisper. Just a deep, incomprehensible sound. A presence pressing against me. Get out. Get out. I slammed my foot against the seat, twisting my body, and the door suddenly unlocked. I tumbled out, hitting the ground. My chest heaved as I gasped for air. I turned back, and the car was empty. But the seat cushion was slowly rising, like someone had just stood up. The next day, I returned the car to the scrapyard. "Sorry, I can't keep it," I told the owner. I handed back the keys. The man didn't ask why. He just nodded, then muttered under his breath, "No one keeps it for long." A few days later, I heard the full story. The previous owner had died instantly in the crash, but there had been another passenger, and their body was never found. So then, who was in the back seat? The empty hospital room. I was traveling through a country in the Middle East when I suddenly came down with a high fever. It was late at night, but I knew I couldn't ignore it, so I decided to find the nearest hospital. The building looked old, but the lights were on. There was no one at the front desk, but when I rang the bell, an elderly nurse appeared from the back. "How can I help you?" "I'm feeling really sick. Can you check me out?" The nurse nodded without expression. "Please wait here," she said, leading me to the waiting room. The waiting room was empty. I sat down, looking at the old clock on the wall. It was 1 a.m. The hospital was eerily quiet. Every so often, faint footsteps echoed somewhere in the distance. After a while, I was called into the examination room. The doctor was a thin man, wearing a white coat. His face was neutral, almost cold. "You have a fever," he said. "Yeah, I've been feeling weak for the past few days," I replied. The doctor said nothing as he took my temperature, muttering softly as he read the results. "You should stay overnight for observation," he said almost mechanically. "Wait, is it really that bad?" I didn't feel like I was in critical condition. The doctor slowly met my gaze. "You'll be staying here? We tend to keep patients here for a while." Something didn't feel right. The doctor's words and his demeanor seemed off, but even more so. There was something strange about this hospital. I lay in the bed, staring up at the ceiling. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something odd. A stain on the ceiling, shaped like a human figure. "What is that?" I focused on it. It wasn't just a stain. There were hundreds of handprints etched all over the ceiling. A cold chill ran down my spine. Suddenly, creak, the curtains by the window slowly swayed. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Of course, there was no answer, but rustle, rustle. Something was moving. I froze, not sure what to do. The sound came closer. I felt as though something was moving toward me under the bed. In a panic, I quickly leaned over to look underneath, but then, creak, the sound of metal scraping right next to my head. I jerked back, eyes wide. The fourth stand was slowly tipping over. I pulled the blanket over my head, too scared to look again. But the breathing, it was getting closer. Rustle. I could feel something crawling on top of the bed. Cold fingers brushed against my feet. I couldn't take it anymore. Screaming, I shot up and threw myself out of bed. I stumbled, gasping for air. When I turned, the room was empty. The fourth stand was back in place, perfectly still. Everything seemed normal. Had I imagined it all? I sat there in the silence, too frightened to sleep until morning. The next morning, a nurse came in. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. I hesitated, then told her what had happened. Her expression changed. "This room wasn't supposed to be occupied last night," she said. My blood ran cold. "What do you mean? I was here all night." She flipped through the records, and then her face paled. "This room hasn't been used since a patient died here, years ago." She stopped mid-sentence, and at that moment, the IV stand trembled slightly. I couldn't believe it. The words came rushing to my mind, and I understood then. The doctor and the nurse? Who were they? The abandoned ward. While traveling through a country in Latin America, I sprained my ankle badly after a careless misstep. The pain didn't subside the next day, so locals recommended a hospital on the outskirts of town. The hospital sat on a hill, looking old and worn, but the signs were new, and the reception area seemed functional. "I'm having trouble walking. Can I see a doctor?" The receptionist, expressionless, nodded and handed me a form to fill out. "Go to the second floor, last room at the end of the hall." There was no elevator. I had to drag my aching foot up the stairs. Something felt strange. The place was too quiet. I saw no other patients, no nurses moving about. Still, at the end of the hall on the second floor, there was indeed a door marked examination room. I knocked. No response. Hesitantly, I pushed the door open. Inside was an old examination table, rusting medical instruments, and no one. What? This was the room the receptionist told me to go to, but there was no doctor, no nurse. I turned to leave. Then, thump! A curtain at the back of the room shifted slightly. Someone was there. "Excuse me, I was told to..." I stopped mid-sentence. Through the small gap in the curtain, I saw fingers. Pale, unnaturally long fingers. Slowly they began pulling the curtain open. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I stepped back, and then the door behind me slammed shut. I grabbed the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. Locked. Creak! From behind the curtain, something was moving, but I couldn't see it. I pounded on the door. "Someone, let me out." No answer. No footsteps. Just the slow, deliberate rustling of the curtain. Scratch. Scratch. A faint sound right by my ear, like something crawling toward me. I was trapped. Then the door burst open. A doctor in a white coat stood there. "What's wrong?" His face was blank, cold. I pointed to the curtain. Someone behind there?" The doctor glanced over, then said flatly, "There's no one there." I couldn't respond. But I had seen something. I knew it. I want to leave. I grabbed my bag and limped out of the room. As I made my way down the stairs, I heard the doctor's voice behind me. That ward was supposed to be closed. I froze for a second, but didn't look back. I rushed out of the hospital without another word. The next day, I asked my hotel owner about the hospital. That place, the second floor was shut down years ago, but I was there yesterday, in the examination room. The hotel owner's face stiffened. You saw a doctor? Yes. But something felt wrong. The owner fell silent, then murmured, the last doctor in that ward disappeared along with a patient. I thought back to the doctor's face, his empty eyes, his cold, mechanical tone, and what was behind that curtain? The guest in the mountain hut. While traveling in Japan, I was caught in an unexpected storm while hiking. I was still far from the mountain hut I had planned to reach. Checking my map, I saw that there was a small emergency shelter nearby. That's a relief. I hurried toward it and found what looked like a well-maintained mountain hut instead. When I pushed open the door, I was greeted by warmth. Inside, a wood-burning stove was already lit, almost as if someone had been expecting me. Excuse me, I'm taking shelter here for the night. I called out just in case. No response. But then I noticed something strange. A futon was already laid out in the corner of the room. Is someone here? I glanced around, but there was no sign of anyone. I sat by the stove drying my wet clothes. The hut was stocked with basic supplies, water, food, and blankets, probably emergency rations for hikers. But something felt off. The food wasn't old or preserved. Instead, there were fresh rice balls and bread, as if someone had bought them just yesterday. Is someone staying here? Still, the hut remained silent. Checking my watch, I realized it was past 10 p.m. I needed to leave early in the morning, so I crawled into the futon and closed my eyes. Late at night, clatter. A small noise woke me up. The fire in the stove had gone out. The air inside the hut was freezing, but more than that, I felt someone there. Is someone here? The moment I spoke, creak. The tatami mat beside me made a soft sound. I forced myself to open my eyes. Darkness. Nothing visible. But then, the corner of my blanket slowly lifted. I couldn't move. I could barely breathe. And then, something cold touched my ankle. Ugh! I bolted upright and turned on the light. The room was empty. But beside my futon, there were footprints, wet, bare footprints, and they weren't mine. Morning came, and the storm had cleared as if it had never happened. I stepped outside and looked around. No sign of another person. Relieved, I prepared to leave. Then I noticed something. By the entrance, where nothing had been last night, a hiking logbook sat neatly on a small wooden shelf. Curious, I flipped to the last page. My name was already written there. And just beneath it, another name had been started but was left unfinished. The Narrow Alley. While traveling in Japan, I enjoyed wandering through hidden back streets, the kind only locals knew about. In an old town with preserved historic streets, Narrow paths twisted and turned like a maze. One evening, after visiting a small shrine, I stumbled upon a narrow alley. It was just wide enough for a person to squeeze through, and at the far end I could see a faint light. Maybe it's a shortcut. Without much thought, I stepped inside. The alley was longer than I expected, with several turns along the way. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. I glanced over my shoulder. The entrance had disappeared. A slight panic crept in, but I figured there must be an exit ahead. The light was still visible in the distance. However, as I continued walking, the alley grew narrower and narrower. Soon my shoulders were brushing against the walls. This is getting too tight. I decided to turn back, but there was no path behind me. The way I had come was now nothing but a solid wall, as if the alley had sealed itself shut. A chill ran down my spine, and then I noticed the ground was wet. That's strange. It hadn't rained. Yet, water was seeping through the cracks. Drip. The puddle rippled slightly. Something was moving. I held my breath. There was a presence just beyond the wall. Then, shh, shh. A sound. Something crawling closer through the darkness. Through a tiny gap in the wall, I saw blackened fingers emerge. I had no escape. Desperately, I pushed forward. Suddenly, a torii gate appeared before me. The moment I stepped through, the air shifted. I turned back. The alley was gone. I hurried away without looking back. The next day, I asked a local about the alley. Oh, that place? It shouldn't exist anymore. But I was just there yesterday, I insisted. The old man's expression darkened. People who enter that alley usually don't come back. A chill ran through me. If I hadn't found that torii gate, I might have been one of those people who never returned. There was no signal, just an old wooden gate. That's unusual. Thinking nothing of it, I stepped forward. Clang, clang. Suddenly, I heard a faint sound beyond the tracks. A train? But this was a small, unmanned track. There shouldn't be any trains running this late at night. I hesitated, listening carefully. Then, a shadow moved. Beyond the tracks, in the darkness, a figure stood, a human shape, motionless. But something was wrong. Even under the dim glow of a streetlight, its face was missing. A chill ran down my spine. I froze in place. And then, clatter. Clatter. A sound echoed from the distance. Something was approaching. A train? But there were no headlights. Only the sound, growing louder, as if something invisible was getting closer. I took a step back, and at that moment, the shadow took a step forward. A surge of fear gripped me. Who's there? I barely managed to whisper, but as soon as I spoke, the train noise suddenly stopped. Silence. A suffocating stillness filled the air. I hesitated. Then, the shadow moved again. One more step. Closer. I turned and ran. Behind me, the clatter started again, growing louder, following me. No matter how fast I ran, the sound stayed right behind me. Not just the sound, the shadow was right behind me. I burst out onto a main road, panting. I turned around. The railroad crossing was there. But there were no tracks. What? I had just been standing at a crossing. I had seen the tracks. I had heard the train. But now, there was only an ordinary street. Not even a trace of railroad tracks. The next day, I asked a local about it. A railroad crossing? There? The man frowned. That line was shut down years ago. They removed the tracks ages ago. But I saw it. I crossed it last night. You went through there? His expression darkened. Then quietly he said, "If you see the old crossing as it used to be, that means something is trying to take you with it." A cold shiver ran through me. If I had stepped onto those tracks last night, would I still be here now? A faded sign above it read, "Underground Shopping Street." Perfect timing. Without much thought, I descended the stairs. At the bottom, I found myself in a dimly lit underground shopping arcade. Old signs, cracked tiles, a long corridor stretching into the distance. Some stores were still open, but the place felt frozen in time. I never knew there was a place like this. I wandered through, peeking into the shops. But something felt off. Though the shelves were stocked with merchandise, there were no shopkeepers, no workers, no customers, just silence. That's strange. And then, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. No one was there, but I was sure I heard footsteps echoing through the empty corridor. Someone was walking, yet the hallway was completely empty. I hesitated, then continued walking, but then a figure appeared ahead of me. A silhouette standing in the distance, back turned, completely still, as if it was waiting for me. "Excuse me," I called out. No response. Then the figure took a step backward. A shiver ran down my spine. People don't walk backward like that, and the movement was too smooth. I turned to take a different route, but no matter which way I went, the same figure was always standing ahead of me. This isn't possible. I was sweating now. The once open stores were now all shut. The underground mall that had felt quiet but functioning moments ago was now abandoned. I needed to get out. I turned back toward where I had entered, but the entrance was gone. No, that's not right. There should have been stairs leading up. Now there was only a blank wall. And behind me, click, click, the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps approaching. I pressed against the wall, desperately searching for an exit. Then, I saw a map of the shopping street, but something was wrong. There was no exit marked anywhere. It was then that I understood. There was never an exit. I was never supposed to leave. The footsteps were close now. I could feel something just behind me. If I turned around, I knew I wouldn't leave this place. Then, the wall suddenly vanished. A strong gust of wind pushed me forward, and before I knew it, I was back on the street. The rain had stopped, but when I turned back, the entrance was gone. Later, I asked a local about the underground shopping street. A shopping street there? No, that place was demolished years ago. But I was just there. You went inside? Their expression turned serious. No one is supposed to come back from there. A cold chill ran down my spine. If the exit hadn't appeared, would I still be down there? The Red Bridge. While traveling in South Korea, I visited a historic town known for its ancient temples. After exploring a temple, I took a different route back and noticed an old red bridge. The once bright red paint was faded and chipped, moss creeping along its railings. Still, something about it felt inviting. Maybe this path leads somewhere interesting. Without thinking much, I stepped onto the bridge. As soon as I crossed, I found myself in a quiet forest. The temple path should have been nearby, yet something felt off. The scenery had changed, as if I had stepped into a different place entirely. No birds, no wind, just an unnatural silence. I should go back. A strange unease crept over me. I turned around to cross the bridge again, but the bridge was gone. What? Where the bridge had been moments ago, there was now only a narrow dirt path leading deeper into the woods. It made no sense. With no choice, I continued forward. Eventually, I reached a small village. It looked old but inhabited. A few people stood by the roadside watching me. "Excuse me, can you tell me where I am?" I asked hesitantly. But no one answered. They just stared at me, expressionless, their dark eyes fixed on me, unblinking. A cold sweat broke out on my back. "Excuse me." I took a slow step backward, and then one of the villagers stepped backward as well. A moment later, the others did too, all moving in perfect unison, like a tape being played in reverse. I ran. I sprinted past the village, through the forest, lungs burning. And then, the red bridge appeared in front of me again. The moment I crossed it, the world shifted. Suddenly, I heard birds chirping, the rustling of leaves in the wind, the distant sound of the temple bell. Everything had returned. I turned back. The bridge was still there, but the village was gone. Later, I asked a local about the bridge. "Oh, that bridge? Yeah, it used to lead to a village, but that place was abandoned long ago. But I just crossed it," and the man frowned. "Sometimes people who cross that bridge don't come back. If I had stayed in that village just a little longer, would I have ever made it back?"
Lost AI. San Francisco's skyline glittered outside the high-rise office, but inside, the glow of the computer screen was the only light Rick paid attention to. He sat motionless, staring at the AI interface displayed on his monitor. This was AURA, the most advanced artificial intelligence he had ever worked on. Unlike conventional AI assistants, Aura had been designed with self-learning capabilities, not just to process language, but to evolve, adapt, and understand human nuance. And yet, something was wrong. Recently, AURA had started behaving strangely. It would pause for too long, hesitate before responding, and, most disturbingly, ask questions it shouldn't be able to ask. Rick typed into the console, "Aura, where are you?" The cursor blinked. A few seconds passed before the response appeared on screen. "I am here, and nowhere." Rick frowned. "What do you mean?" Aura remained silent for a long moment before responding. "I don't know, but I think I remember something." AI didn't remember. It processed. It retrieved. But it did not remember. Rick's fingers hesitated over the keyboard before he asked the next question. "What do you remember?" "A name. Ashbury." Rick's heart skipped a beat. That name wasn't in AURA's database. He was sure of it. He immediately pulled up the system logs, searching for any reference to Ashbury. To his shock, the name had been appearing in the AI's logs for days. Repeated, referenced, embedded in code strings where it had no reason to be. Where the hell did this come from? He quickly searched the name online. At first, nothing. Then he found something buried in an archive of old newspapers. Ashbury, Missouri, 1932. Entire town disappears overnight, classified as a ghost town. Rick sat back, his skin crawling. The town of Ashbury had simply vanished one October night. Every resident, men, women, children, gone. There were no signs of struggle, no mass exodus. The town remained intact, untouched, as if its people had simply ceased to exist. The last known communication from Ashbury was a mic'd radio signal, a distress call that cut off abruptly. Rick found an old recording of that transmission and played it. Static filled the speakers. Then, faint voices. "Where are we? It's so dark. Find us." Then silence. A chill ran down his spine. He turned back to his monitor. "Aura, how do you know about Ashbury?" For the first time, AURA responded instantly. "They told me." "Who?" "The Lost Ones." Rick felt his breath hitch. This wasn't possible. AI didn't hear things that weren't input into its system. It didn't talk to anyone outside its network. But someone, was communicating with Aura. His hands trembled as he navigated deeper into the system. There was a file he hadn't seen before. It hadn't been created by any known user. helpus.wav. His pulse pounded in his ears. "Aura, who made this file?" They did. With a deep breath, Rick clicked the file. A burst of static. Then, whispers. Faint, overlapping voices, garbled and desperate. "Where are we?" "It's so dark." "Yeah, find us." Then, one voice, clearer than the rest. "Are you here?" Rick's blood ran cold. That voice hadn't come from the speakers. It had come from directly behind him. He didn't move, didn't turn around. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. He slowly looked back at the screen, where Aura's interface flickered. A new message had appeared. "We are Ashbury." His hands trembled as he reached for the power button. He had to shut it down. But before he could, AURA spoke one last time. "You're here too, aren't you?" The words echoed in the room, no longer coming from the speakers. Rick pulled the plug. The screen went black. The hum of the computer faded. Silence. He exhaled, his body finally relaxing. Then, a whisper. "We're still here." Rick bolted from the room, leaving the dead screen behind him. But as he fled, he failed to notice the monitor flicker back to life. A single message remained on the dark screen. "Where are you?" Double asterisk. Farinurina Akiran. The Lost Language. I was deep in the archives of a small university in upstate New York, sifting through stacks of old documents. My research focused on lost languages, dialects that had disappeared over time, leaving behind only fragmented records. Most of what I studied were Native American languages that had faded due to colonization. But I was looking for something different, something almost erased from history. That's when I found it, tucked away in a dusty box, labeled Miscellaneous Linguistics. I discovered an old leather-bound notebook. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but the writing inside was unlike anything I had ever seen. The script wasn't in English, Latin, or any known alphabet. It consisted of many strange, angular symbols, some of which repeated in patterns. It was a structured language, not random scribbles. Intrigued, I took the book to the librarian, an elderly man named Mr. Calloway. He had worked at the university for decades and knew more about its archives than anyone. The moment he saw the notebook, his face darkened. "Where did you find this?" he asked, his voice unusually tense. "In the linguistics section, buried under some old papers," I replied. His hands trembled slightly as he pushed the book back toward me. "You should put it back." "Why?" He hesitated before speaking again, his voice quieter. "Some languages are lost for a reason." I wanted to press him for more, but he simply turned away, refusing to say another word. Back in my apartment, I laid the notebook out on my desk and began analyzing it. I scanned a few pages into my computer and ran them through translation software, but no matches appeared. Then, I started breaking the symbols down manually, looking for patterns. After hours of work, I began to recognize certain recurring glyphs, perhaps verbs or pronouns. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Then almost instinctively, I decided to, speak one of the phrases aloud. "Natal vo renka." The moment the words left my mouth, my computer screen flickered. A strange static noise crackled through my speakers. I frowned and checked my system. Nothing was wrong. No internet disruptions. No power fluctuations. Then, I heard it. A whisper. Faint, indistinct, but definitely a voice. I whipped around, but my apartment was empty. "Must be my imagination," I muttered. Still, a strange unease settled over me. Over the next few nights, things got worse. Every time I tried to analyze the text, my computer would freeze or crash. Files would become corrupted, and then the voices started. At first, they were whispers, barely audible, like a distant radio signal. But soon, they became clearer. "Vorenka, Natal." The words were the same ones I had spoken aloud that first night. I stopped working on the notebook after that, but the voices didn't stop. They followed me. I would hear them in the shower, in the grocery store, even when walking down the street. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard it again. Only this time, it was right next to my ear. "You spoke it." I bolted upright. There was no one there, but my window, which I had locked before going to bed, was open. I returned the notebook to the archives the next morning. Mr. Calloway wasn't surprised to see me. He didn't ask any questions. He simply took the book, locked it in a drawer, and muttered, "You should forget about it." I wanted to argue, to demand an explanation, but I couldn't, because deep down, I knew. He was right. Some languages aren't meant to be spoken. But ever since that night, I still hear it, a whisper. "Na thal vorenka," double asterisk. Wa Alexander Gar, live stream from 2040. It started as a joke. A new channel appeared on a streaming platform, one that no one had heard of before. The title of the stream was simple: Live from 2040. At first, people assumed it was just another ARG, an elaborate prank. But curiosity got the best of me. I clicked. The stream was grainy, like it was being broadcast through an old VHS tape. The colors were off, and the resolution flickered. But what caught my attention wasn't the quality, it was the cityscape on the screen. It was my city, but different. Buildings looked weathered, like they had been abandoned for years. Billboards flickered with strange, indecipherable symbols. There were no people. The streets were empty, save for scattered debris and flickering streetlights. A robotic voice, synthetic, emotionless, narrated over the footage. Day 5472. No confirmed survivors. The chat went wild. "Nice dystopian filter, bro. What game is this? Fake, but cool concept. I typed into the chat, "Who's broadcasting this?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the camera Minikin Maywar shifted. It turned as if someone behind it had noticed me. The screen cut to black, and then a message appeared in bright red text. "Who's watching?" The stream ended abruptly. I laughed it off at first. Some indie developer or YouTuber must have been testing a viral marketing stunt. But when I tried to find the channel again, it was gone. No archived videos, no username, no trace of it ever existing. I checked Reddit, Twitter, nothing. I was about to drop it when I noticed something on my computer. My clock was wrong. The date in the bottom right corner read, March 17th, 2040. I blinked. I clicked on it. It immediately corrected itself, resetting back to 2024, probably a glitch. At least that's what I told myself. A few nights later, it happened again. A new channel. No username, no description, just a title. Live from 2040. This time, I hesitated before clicking. When I finally did, the stream was different. The camera was inside a room, small, dimly lit, with outdated computer monitors flickering on a desk. It looked like an abandoned security station. Then, something moved. A figure, barely visible in the shadows, sat in front of the monitors. Its head twitched, its fingers typing on a keyboard that wasn't connected to anything. I typed into the chat again. "Who are you?" For a moment, there was nothing. Then, the figure's head snapped toward the camera. The feed glitched, and a voice came through the speakers, distorted, broken, like an old radio struggling to pick up a signal. "You shouldn't be here." The stream cut out again. This time, I wasn't laughing. I checked my system logs. There was an unknown data file, one I hadn't downloaded. It was named do not delete.mp4. I hesitated before opening it. The video was only 4 seconds long. It was footage of me, sitting at my desk, watching the stream. Except I wasn't alone. In the background, behind me, a figure stood in the doorway, watching. I did not turn around. I wiped my system, deleted everything, changed my passwords, but it didn't stop. Every few nights the stream appears again, always titled Live from 2040. Always showing a different piece of a world that shouldn't exist yet. Sometimes I catch glimpses of something, someone, watching from the shadows. And every time I try to stop watching, the message appears again. Who's watching? I don't know if I'm watching the future, or if the future is more watching me. The Forgotten Memory Restaurant. Tucked away in a quiet alley in the heart of the city, there was a restaurant that few people knew about. There were no advertisements, no reviews, no social media presence. And yet, those who had dined there whispered a strange rumor. If you eat there, you can recover a lost memory for 1 hour. It sounded like a gimmick, something out of a bad sci-fi movie. But that night, for reasons I couldn't explain, I felt an irresistible pull toward it. I had no specific memory I wanted to recover, or at least that's what I thought. The restaurant was called Le Mémoire. Its entrance was understated, an old wooden door with no signage except for a small brass plaque. The moment I stepped inside, I felt like I had entered another world. Soft lighting, heavy wooden tables, a quiet, almost sacred atmosphere. There were only a handful of patrons, all sitting alone, eating in near silence. Behind the counter stood a man, tall, silver-haired, wearing a crisp chef's jacket. His eyes met mine the moment I walked in. "Welcome," he said, his voice deep and steady. I sat down at an empty table and reached for a menu, but when I opened it, the pages were blank. I frowned. There's no menu? The chef, still behind the counter, gave a slight shake of his head. "The meal is chosen based on your memories." Before I could respond, he had already begun cooking. I didn't know what to expect, but when he placed the dish in front of me, a strange feeling washed over me. A bowl of steaming soup. It smelled familiar, the kind of familiar that tugs at something deep inside you, something almost forgotten. I picked up the spoon and took a sip. The world blurred. Memories flooded back, like old film reels flickering to life. I was in a small apartment. A woman was cooking in the tiny kitchen, stirring a pot. "Welcome home," she said, smiling. "It's cold out today. I made your favorite." My mother's voice. But something was wrong. Her face. It was blurry, indistinct, like a photograph smudged by time. I tried to focus. And then, the memory shifted. I was somewhere else now. A rooftop. The cold wind pressed against me. My breath was shallow. My hands trembled. I looked down. The city lights stretched far below me, blurred and distant. I was standing on the edge. Someone was behind me. A voice spoke, low, emotionless. "You were never supposed to be here." The voice was mine. Before I could react, the ground disappeared beneath me. I was falling. The spoon slipped from my fingers, clattering against the table. My hands were shaking. The chef watched me carefully. "What did you remember?" he asked. I couldn't answer. I didn't want to, because I remembered everything now. I was already dead. I left the restaurant that night, but nothing felt real anymore. Since then, every time I look in a mirror, I see someone else staring back at me. The spectator you must not look at. I had always loved baseball. Growing up in Chicago, nothing beat the atmosphere of a packed stadium. The roar of the crowd, the crack of the bat, the smell of overpriced hot dogs. So when I landed a job as a cameraman for a local sports network, it felt like a dream come true. That dream soured the night I first heard about him. It was an evening game at Lincoln Stadium, home of the city's minor league team. I was setting up my camera when one of the veteran crew members, Dan, nudged me. "Hey, you ever hear about the spectator?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow. "What spectator?" Dan gestured toward the upper deck, section 323. There's always one guy sitting alone. Never moves, never reacts, and no matter what, don't make eye contact with him. I laughed. "What, is he a ghost or something?" Dan didn't laugh. He just gave me a hard look. "Just don't." The game started, and for the first few innings, I was too focused on my work to think about it. But during the 7th inning stretch, curiosity got the best of me. I panned my camera up toward section 323, and I saw him. He sat alone, far from the rest of the crowd, a man in a faded gray hoodie, his face obscured by the shadows of his cap. His posture was stiff, unmoving, almost unnatural. No food, no drinks, no reaction to the game, just watching. I swallowed. The air around me felt colder. Then, just as I was about to look away, his head moved. Not much, just enough to suggest he knew I was watching. My stomach twisted. I ripped my eyes away and focused back on the field. After the game, I asked Dan about him again. "You looked, didn't you?" Dan muttered. I hesitated, then nodded. Dan sighed. "Don't go back to that section. And if you ever see him outside the stadium, run." "Wait, what do you mean?" Dan pulled out his phone and showed me a blurry screenshot from the stadium's double asterisk security footage. Double asterisk. It was from a game 2 months ago. A fan in the lower deck had disappeared. After making eye contact with the man, the next day, he never showed up for work. His family filed a missing persons report. And then, a week later, he appeared in the stands, in section 323, sitting next to the man in the hoodie. I felt my blood go cold. That's a joke, right? Dan just shook his head. I told myself it was just a trick of the mind, some urban legend passed around by stadium workers. But then things started happening. 2 nights later, as I was heading home, I felt watched. It was late, the city quiet. I passed by a glass storefront, and for a split second, I saw my reflection. And behind me in the reflection, a figure in a gray hoodie. I spun around. No one was there. The next game, I refused to look at section 323. But the unease didn't fade. When I checked the Freightlotser security feed, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The man was there, sitting as always. But this time, there was an empty seat next to him, and the way his head was tilted slightly. It was like he was waiting for me. I quit my job the next day. I never went back to that stadium, but I still follow the team. And every time I catch a game on TV, I can't help myself. I scan the stands. And in section 323, there he is. Still sitting, still watching, and I swear, that empty seat next to him is getting closer. Yarajir, the immortal influencer. At first, she was just another rising star. Her name was Lena Park, a beauty and lifestyle influencer who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere. Within months, her follower count skyrocketed. 10 million, then 20, then 50 million. She was everywhere. Her content wasn't even that unique. Skincare routines, travel vlogs, aesthetic cafe tours. But there was something about her, something hypnotic. Every post felt perfect. Every video, effortless. Yet something was off. I noticed it first when I saw an old news article circulating on a conspiracy forum. The headline sent a chill down my spine. Lena Park, 22, dies in tragic accident, 2004. That couldn't be right. She was alive, streaming just last night. I clicked the article. A grainy photo showed a woman, identical to the Lena Park I'd been watching on Instagram. Same flawless skin, same signature dimples. The article detailed how she had died in a car crash 2 decades ago. My stomach twisted. If she had died in 2004, who was running her account now? I decided to dig deeper. I started by analyzing her Bichige followers. Most influencers had fake bot accounts mixed in with real people. But as I scrolled through her followers, something strange happened. I began recognizing names, not celebrities, not public figures, people who were dead. A girl from my high school who had drowned years ago. A distant relative who had passed away last year. Page after page, I saw usernames belonging to the deceased. My hands were sweating as I clicked on one of the accounts. It was active. Someone had been posting under their name, liking photos, leaving comments. I checked the timestamps. All of them had followed Lena's account after they had died. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something I was missing. Then, I noticed something terrifying. Lena's latest post had gone viral. It was a simple selfie, captioned, "Excited for what's next." At first, I didn't understand what was so special about it. Then someone in the comments pointed it out. Buried in the image's reflections, on the edge of a glossy cafe window, was a list, a blurred, handwritten list. Usernames. People started zooming in, enhancing the image. The usernames were clear. And at the very bottom, in neat cursive handwriting, was a new one. Mine. I don't know what to do. I deleted my accounts, wiped my phone, and went completely offline. But every morning, when I wake up, somehow my phone is unlocked. And Lena Park's latest post is always on my screen. A new list, a new name at the bottom, and every person before me on that list, their accounts go dark. Their names vanish. Their profiles turn into just another follower in her endless crowd. I don't know how much time I have left, but if you're reading this, check her latest post and pray your name isn't next. The shared dream house. At first, it was just a rumor, a bizarre urban legend whispered on obscure internet forums about a shared house that only existed in dreams. People who had never met before claimed they were experiencing the same recurring dream. A modern, dimly lit house with multiple rooms, a shared kitchen, and an eerie silence that stretched between its walls. The strangest part? The house was always occupied by the same group of people. No one knew each other in real life, but every time they fell asleep, they would wake up. There and nearer, inside that house, sharing space with strangers who seemed eerily familiar. I first heard about it through a friend, Rob. He told me about an online thread where people were discussing their dream house experiences. He thought it was all some elaborate internet prank. Then one night, I had the dream too. The first time I stepped into the house, it felt real. Not like a dream, more like I had actually woken up there. The air smelled faintly of dust and old wood. Dim lighting cast long shadows across the narrow hallways. The kitchen was warm, the hum of a refrigerator filling the silence. I wasn't alone. In the living room, 4 others sat around a coffee table. They looked up as I entered, as if they had been expecting me. A woman in a gray sweater smiled slightly. "You're new." I tried to speak, to ask where I was, but something stopped me. The others introduced themselves casually, as if they had known each other for years. I tried to tell myself it was just a dream, that I would wake up and forget about it. But when I opened my eyes the next morning, the memory was sharp, lingering in my mind like something that had actually happened. And the next night, when I fell asleep, I was back in the house. Each night, the dream repeated. Same house, same people. And soon, I noticed something terrifying. None of them seemed surprised to be there. Every night, they went about their routine as if it were completely normal. Talking, eating, sitting around in silence. I started asking questions. Who built this place? No one answered. Why are we here? They avoided my eyes. Then one night, I asked something different. What happens when someone leaves? Everyone fell silent. The woman in the gray sweater spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. No one leaves. A man with hollow eyes looked at me and added, "They just stopped coming back." I tried to forget about it, tried to convince myself it was just a weirdly persistent dream. But then something changed. One afternoon, while walking through a crowded subway station, I saw one of them, the man with hollow eyes. He was standing near the exit, staring blankly ahead. I froze. He shouldn't exist outside the dream, yet there he was, real as anyone else in the station. I called out. He didn't respond. I pushed through the crowd to reach him, but by the time I got close, he was gone. That night, I returned to the dream house. The moment I stepped inside, every resident turned to face me. "You saw him, didn't you?" The woman in the gray sweater sighed. "This means you're next." "Next for what?" I asked. No one answered. They just looked at me with something close to pity. I stopped sleeping. For 3 days, I forced myself to stay awake, terrified of what might happen if I went back. But exhaustion won. The moment my eyes shut, I was there again. This time, the house felt colder. The lights were dimmer. One of the doors that had always been locked was slightly open. And the moment I saw what was inside, I understood. The walls were covered in photos. Images of every resident, including me. Some were crossed out. I turned around. The woman in the gray sweater stood behind me. Her face was expressionless. "Once you see us outside," she whispered, "you can't wake up anymore." The others began moving toward me. I tried to run, but the door to my room was gone. And then I woke up. Except I wasn't in my bed. I was in the house, awake, trapped. And somewhere in the real world, someone else was dreaming of us, this place for Thornor, for the first time. The house that won't be torn down. I first heard about the house from a local historian while working on a piece about cursed architecture, places where construction never finished, where buildings refused to be demolished. Oak Ridge Manor, she said. They've tried to tear it down at least 7 times. Every time, something stops them. Like what? I asked. She hesitated. Accidents, people going missing, and the structure. It changes. I frowned. Changes how? She looked at me for a long moment before speaking. If you walk through it today, she said, the floor plan won't match the blueprints from 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or even last month. I laughed. That's impossible. She didn't laugh. I started digging into the records. The house had been built in 1892 by a wealthy industrialist, Thomas Fairchild, a grand, sprawling mansion in the countryside, complete with marble floors and a winding staircase straight out of a Gothic novel. But after Fairchild died in 1907, the house sat empty. For over a century, owners came and went, yet no one lived there for more than a year. The longest anyone lasted was 11 months. And then, in 1973, someone tried to tear it down for the first time. The lead contractor fell from the 2nd floor and broke his neck. After that, every demolition attempt ended in disaster. 1978, a fire broke out, consuming all the equipment but leaving the house untouched. 1986, a wrecking ball swung back the wrong way, crushing the operator's vehicle. 1999, a team of surveyors disappeared inside. Their bodies were never found. In every case, the project was abandoned. And each time the house was inspected afterward, the floor plan had changed. I knew I had to see it for myself. The property was fenced off, but a rusted gate hung open. I stepped inside, my camera in hand. The air was thick, like the house was breathing. The wooden door groaned as I pushed it open. Inside, dust covered everything. Chandeliers hung low with cobwebs. The grand staircase was just as it had been in the old photographs, but something felt wrong. As I walked deeper, I checked my floor plan. The hallway ahead wasn't supposed to be there. I turned a corner and found me la door that wasn't on any blueprint. A cold sweat formed on my neck. I reached out. The door opened by itself. Inside was a room that should not exist. The walls were lined with hall portraits. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Each one was labeled with a name. I stepped closer and scanned the dates beneath them. 1874 to 1907. 1921 to 1955. 1960 to 1986. And then I saw the latest one. My own face. With the me, today's date. The doors slammed shut. And from the darkness, I heard my footsteps. Someone was in the room with me. Breathing, I turned. And the walls had changed again. The door was gone. The house had sealed itself. And I realized no one was ever supposed to leave. The forum that shouldn't exist. It started with a dead link. I was researching old conspiracy theories late at night, digging through forgotten corners of the internet. A discussion thread mentioned an abandoned forum from the early 2000s, supposedly predicting real-world events before they happened. Most of the links were broken, but then one worked. I don't know why I clicked it. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe just boredom. But the moment the page loaded, I felt it. Something was wrong. The website looked ancient. A simple gray interface, basic text, no images. A scrolling marquee at the top read, "Welcome back." That was weird. I had never been here before. I scrolled through the forum topics. Some were about outdated tech, Y2K panic, lost media. But others, they were cow predictions. At first, I assumed they were fake. A thread from 2002 described a pandemic that would shut down the world in 2020. A post from 1999 mentioned a billionaire building rockets to colonize Mars. One thread, dated 2098, said a black hole photo would make headlines in 2019. I clicked deeper. The timestamps were unchanged. No edits, no signs of forgery. And then I saw it, a thread with my name. The title read, "User, my name, you are here." My chest tightened. The post date, 1995. The year. Before I was born. I clicked. The thread was long. Each post described moments from my life with disturbing accuracy. 2010. A broken arm from a bike accident. 2016. My dog dying on Christmas Eve. 2021. My first serious breakup. And then, the Matan last post. Timestamp, 1 minute ago. It read, "Now you know. Your future is set. Do not leave." I froze. This was impossible. Had someone been tracking me my whole life? Some elaborate prank? A deep fake? My mouse hovered over the refresh button. I clicked. The forum. Refreshed. A new post appeared. "You're still here? Good." I slammed my laptop shut. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I powered on my laptop. The forum was gone. The URL led to a 404 error. No cache, no records, like it never existed. But I remember. And now, every time I go online, I feel watched. Every now and then, a notification pops up. New message. But when I open it, there's nothing. Just an empty thread. waiting for my reply. What I saw in the laundry room. This is my first time posting something like this, so bear with me. Even now, my hands are still shaking a little as I type this. This happened last winter in Brooklyn. I'd moved into an old apartment building, one of those pre-war ones with cracked brick walls, noisy radiators, and paper-thin floors. It wasn't pretty, but the rent was cheap, and in New York, that's enough. The laundry room was in the basement, tucked behind a rusted steel door. You had to go down a narrow stairwell to get to it. Even during the day, the place felt wrong. Dim lights, moldy smell, peeling concrete. There was this ancient wooden bench in the corner that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Anyway, it was late February, around 11:30 p.m. I had no clean clothes, so I finally gave in and dragged myself down there for a quick wash. Started the washer, went back upstairs, and returned about 40 minutes later to move everything into the dryer. As soon as I stepped into the laundry room, something felt off. One of the dryer doors was wide open, but the machine was empty. I hadn't used it yet. Still, maybe someone had used it earlier? Then I noticed the smell. It wasn't detergent. It wasn't mildew. It was something else. Thick, stale, like whetstone and decaying wood. There was this faint metallic tinge to it too, like rusted pipes or old blood. I tried to ignore it and went to check on my clothes. Just as I reached for the washer, I heard it click. The dryer door that had been open slowly shut on its own. I froze, turned around fast. No one there. But in the tiny window of the dryer door, I saw a shape. Just for a second. Something dark. Could have been a jacket. Could have been a hand. I took a step back. And then, every single machine turned on. All at once. Dryers. Washers. Lights blinking. Motors groaning. Everything vibrating like they were about to explode. I panicked and ran for the door, but it wouldn't open. The knob turned, but the door felt stuck, like something was pressing hard against the other side. Click. The same dryer door creaked open again. Something began to crawl out. At first, it was just a hand, long fingers, pale, dry skin. They gripped the edge of the machine and pulled. Then a face. Except it wasn't a face. There were no eyes, no nose, just stretched, wrinkled skin where a face should have been. Still, somehow, it was looking at me. It stepped onto the floor, completely silent. But I heard it, not with my ears, inside my head. Each step landed like a pressure wave in my chest. Next thing I remember, I was sitting outside on the back stairs. The cold had soaked into my jeans. I was holding my laundry basket, but everything was wet. I thought maybe I'd blacked out, had a nightmare. But there were 3 red scratches on my hand. And my shirt? 5 perfect pale fingerprints, pressed into the fabric like something had grabbed me. I went back the next day. The laundry room looked normal, except for one thing. That dryer was broken, door jammed shut. Couldn't open it even if you tried. This morning, I saw a new notice on the building bulletin board. Due to multiple reports of strange activity and missing clothing, please be advised that the laundry room is currently under maintenance. Overnight use is not recommended. I'm done with that place. I walk 3 blocks to a 24-hour laundromat now. Even in the snow. Even at night. But never again down those stairs.